You're listening to the Love Over Addiction podcast. Hi, it's Michelle, and I am coming to you from my backyard. You might be able to hear some birds. You'll definitely hear my dogs bark during this. And if you listen real closely, you might hear some kids inside the house screaming at each other. I think the fight today is about how to take good selfies. I have no idea, guys. We are barely hanging on. But listen, there are people out there that are way, way worse than us. And so I'm just going to try and be grateful and compassionate, which, by the way, is the perfect segment to what we are going to talk about today, which is compassion. Okay, so it occurred to me that many of you are stuck living with your loved one who is suffering from addiction right now, and you are suffering with them because your face is in it way more than usual. One of our tools that we talk about a lot in the program is when they start drinking or using drugs, you get your keys in your purse and you get in the car and you leave. You go for a walk. You remove yourself from the situation. Well, for a lot of us, that is not possible during this virus situation. And so we're stuck in quarantine, and the person we love is drinking or using drugs right in front of our faces. And that can be incredibly triggering, can't it? So how do we get through this period that has no end date with sanity and while still loving somebody with addiction? How do we get through this without losing our minds? And one of the ways that we can do this is through compassion. Now, a long time ago, back when I was married to a good man who suffered from addiction, he had a girlfriend. And my kids used to go visit him right after we were divorced. And one day, his girlfriend called me during a time that my kids were visiting. And she was living with him at the time. And she was a good person. So I knew every time I sent my kids there to visit, I knew they would be in good hands with her. So she called me one day while my kids were up there, and she said, Michelle, we got into a huge fight. I'm walking around the grocery store with the kids, but I don't know what to do. And she sounded panicked. You guys know exactly how she feels. That chaotic panic that you feel like your world is about to fall apart, which kind of makes sense to you, but kind of doesn't, because you remember feeling the same way last week and your world didn't fall apart. But every time the new situation occurs, you convince yourself this time everything really genuinely is going to fall apart. So I could tell in her voice it was one of those moments. And selfishly, as a mom, I thought, my kids are with her. I have to talk her down off the ledge because I need everybody to be getting along here for the sake of my children. It wasn't time for one of those empowerment speeches that, I explained to her what he was doing was terrible and that, she needed to set stronger boundaries or take a stand against him. That was not appropriate advice for that moment. And I feel like you are in a similar situation because you can't escape, because you have nowhere else to go. We need to look for ways to cope while in the same house or apartment as our loved one. And so the way we do that is through compassion. So when I was speaking to his girlfriend, giving her advice, this is what I told her, and it's the same advice I'm going to tell you, which is, yes, it is important for us to feel compassionate towards ourselves. That's one of the key fundamentals of our community, is first compassion towards ourselves. But in this unique situation, I am asking you to feel compassion towards your loved one. That is a way to forgiveness, and forgiveness is a way to peace. And forgiveness and compassion are also a way to feel empowered. So how do you arrive at a place of compassion? Because I know a lot of you are like, Michelle, there's no way. You have no idea what's going on in my house. Compassion is the last word that I'm feeling right now. And listen, I do know what's going on in your house or your apartment. I get what's going on in your life. And I can tell you compassion is a choice. It's basically a way to change your perspective. So, the way you get to compassion is imagining yourself as the addict or the alcoholic. Most likely, they were born with this disease. And if they were not born with this disease, then something very, very traumatic happened in their life. And this is how they are coping with the trauma, with the unresolved pain and suffering that they went through in the past. If they have a genetic predisposition, you guys, they couldn't help that. They were born with this disposition. They were born with this. They didn't ask for it. There was nothing they did that caused it. And can you imagine if you or I were born with this and how difficult life would be? Imagine every time you go drive down the highway and you see a billboard for beer, or you see an ad for a cool man in a bar with vodka and good-looking women around him, and you can't touch that. You can't go near that. Or you go out to a party or a business meeting or a holiday function with your family, and there's wine on the table, or there's beers being served in the cooler, or there's now many states where marijuana is legalized and you can't do that. Drugs and alcohol are all over the place all the time. They're constantly, our loved ones are constantly being reminded about everybody else's ability to get drunk or get buzzed or get high, and they can't do it. They have to have that willpower every second of every day for the rest of their lives. That's not easy request. That has got to be so difficult, and we don't understand this. We don't have this. Now, I don't know about you, but there are certain foods that I really enjoy. I love carbs. I love sugar. And I have tried my darndest to live a life where I don't have indulgences in those foods, and I can't do it, particularly during this time of stress. Do you know how many people are baking and eating and gaining weight, and they're using food as a coping mechanism for their fear and anxiety and stress of losing jobs or losing incomes or losing family members? And now we're sitting here asking our loved ones to remain sober during this incredibly stressful time. And oh, by the way, they can't go to meetings. Even if they wanted to try and get help and reach out, meetings are being canceled. Now, yes, they have Zoom meetings, but if you look at the statistics, not a lot of people are going to Zoom meetings. People are dropping out of AA because they're lacking the real connection that it takes in order to get sober. So when you sit there and you get frustrated, or you get hurt, or you get upset or angry at your loved one who is using drugs and alcohol now more than ever, I want you to think about how difficult it is for them. How hard it is for them to get help right now in this moment, and how lucky and blessed you and I are that we don't have to deal with that pain, that we don't have to deal with that struggle, that we have no idea the discipline it must take to get sober long term, and how lucky we are that we never have to struggle with that. Look at your loved one with love. during this time and think to yourself, if they are even remotely trying to get sober, if they are remotely even attempting for 1 hour of one day to put the beer down or not to drink, or they throw it down the drain, or they don't purchase it that day, or whatever, you commend them. You say thank you. You say, well done. I'm so proud of you. And if they aren't trying because they aren't capable, that's okay. I want you, just for this time being, to try and practice to keep a quiet mouth. You become disciplined because they can't. You become the strength and the strong one and keep quiet. Don't nag. Don't pressure them. Don't remind them how bad they suck, because guess what? They already know it. They already believe that about themselves. They don't need you going around the house telling them how bad they are. They already feel powerless and helpless. So you practice your discipline, and you be supportive by not being hurtful with your words. Now, I'm not sitting there saying you got to give them a back massage and you've got to, run a bath for them and try to be their therapist. I'm not saying that, guys. What I am saying, though, is you leave them alone. You let them feel their feelings and cope the way they need to cope. And you practice a quiet mouth and self-care. You find a corner in the house or the apartment that you can claim your own. We teach this in the programs. You get books and make that corner your little corner. You get books and put them in the corner. You get candles. You bring in a TV, a fluffy pillow, a blanket, whatever. And that's your safe spot. If there is a door that you can close to a room where you can make your safe spot, do that. Make a section in your living space just for you where you can go to escape. Where if addiction gets too bad in your home, you can grab your kids, you can grab yourself, and you can go into that space. When you are tempted to nag or to yell or to scream, it's okay. Keep a quiet mouth, have self-compassion, and go to your quiet space. And every time you think about how difficult it is for you in this situation, which I feel complete empathy and compassion for you because I have been there. I want you to also think you are not the only one that is suffering through this. Your loved one, despite what they say, despite what they do, is suffering as well. And I know that you are a smart enough person and a very loving person, and that you have it within you. Even if you are planning on leaving, you have it in you to exercise compassion for all of those people in your immediate life. I know this was a little challenging of a podcast. I know I'm a little in your face today, but listen, I have been there. I am your greatest cheerleader, your biggest advocate, and your largest truth teller. And sometimes we all need a little bit of tough love. And that is what you're getting from me today. If it's not working for you, that's fine. Go back to another episode where I'm a little bit more gentle and a little bit more loving. But maybe for some of you, this is exactly what you needed to hear. And maybe this is the way you are going to survive getting through this difficult time.
This podcast is created for your support, encouragement, and entertainment with Michelle's personal thoughts and beliefs. From one woman to another, bonded together by the fact we love someone suffering from addiction. This is not intended as a substitute for therapy or advice from a professional.